being here. Thank you for showing that even in a small town like Deerfield, we don't tolerate racism. So we're going to have some speakers today, and first up we have Macy Mcghie reading a speech originally by Frederick Douglass about what it means for a black person, the 4th of July, and how it's kind of not a great holiday. So... thank you for following COVID guidelines too.
Hello. This is really close. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm very nervous to read this right now, but in times like this, silence is deadly, and that shouldn't be a reason to stay silent. Fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in the Declaration of Independence extended to us? And I am, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and to express devout gratitude for our blessings and resulting from your independence up to us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessing in which this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not me. The sunlight that has brought life and healing to us has brought stripes of death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag the men feeders into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in this joyous anthems, where in human mockery and sacrilegious irony, do you mean citizens to mock me by asking me to speak here today? What to the American slave is the 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all others days of the years, the gross injustice and cruelty in which he is a constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boasted liberty, your unholy license, and your national greatness, swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. You communicate your tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers, your hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil is to cover up crimes that would disgrace the nation of savages. There is not a nation of this earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument, is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would. Today, pour forth a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For this is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not a gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, the earthquake, and the feeling of nations must be quickened. The conscience of this nation must be aroused. The property of this nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of this nation must be exposed, and the crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
Thank you, Macy, for that. Next we have Haven Vincent-Warner to talk about climate justice and how it relates to Black people. more than others.
We cannot fully discuss racism or working towards an anti-racist society without addressing the climate crisis and its disproportionate effects on Black people, Indigenous people, and other people of color, or BIPOC is just what I'm going to say. Environmental racism is defined as how waste, pollution, and the climate crisis have a disproportionate impact on BIPOC. Environmental racism is a tool used to enforce a white supremacist capitalist system. The fossil fuel industry and other large industries have been aware of the effects of their actions on the climate and subsequently all life on Earth for years. And these companies want money, and so do politicians. The companies pay the politicians who in return bail the companies out time and time again. This leaves the people to deal with the harsh effects of the climate crisis. But it's not the white middle class who are affected first. It's BIPOC, those in low-income housing, and those who have been forced into frontline communities. When working towards anti-racism, we must talk about the intersectionality of the climate crisis. There are countless examples of environmental racism. To name a few, we must discuss how the poorest half of the world, which is around 3.5 billion people, only contribute to about 10% of global emissions, while the richest 10% contribute an entire 50%. The fast fashion industry makes huge profits from the exploitation of Black and brown women. Indigenous people who contribute the least to climate change are affected by it the most. And it is projected that between 25 million and 1.5 billion people will have to leave their homes and immigrate by 2050 due to climate change. Gentrification and redlining were created to and continue to oppress Black communities, and race is the #1 indicator for placement of toxic facilities in the United States. Black people are exposed to 50% more air pollution than white people, and BIPOC are being intentionally exposed to health risks like asthma, cancer, reproductive harm, developmental health issues, and the list goes on. Prisons where BIPOC are disproportionately incarcerated often lack air conditioning and heat control, which is particularly detrimental with global warming. During a global pandemic which targets the respiratory system and is already disproportionately affecting Black people, police are attacking peaceful protesters with tear gas. We must condemn and take action to dismantle environmental racism, as well as the system that enforces it. To change the deeply ingrained racism connected to climate change, it is vital to center BIPOC experiences and amplify BIPOC voices. We also must acknowledge the impacts of colonialism and the ongoing exploitation of communities of color, as well as provide reparations for those who are impacted. We cannot dismantle racism, the racist system, or stop climate change if we ourselves are not actively and constantly working to be anti-racist and to unlearn the white supremacy that every single one of you have been taught since birth. We will never see true racial justice until we have climate justice, and we will continue fighting until we achieve both.
Thank you so much, Haven. And I just want to say really quickly, I'm so grateful for everyone who is speaking here today. One of our speakers had to drop out kind of last minute, and I am so, so grateful for everyone who was able to step in, so thank you for that. And I don't want to be up here long because I think a main focus of mine throughout planning this has been to decentralize myself and try and elevate voices that aren't heard as much, Black people, people of color. And so the only reason I'm up here right now is I want to make sure that we remind white people of their role in this. And while it is so incredibly important to elevate Black voices, elevate the voices of people of color, to listen to them, to read about them and all of the experiences that they have to go through that we can't even begin to understand, it's also not fair for us to put pressure on the Black community to solve this, because it's a white problem and we need to understand that. So I was reading through this article that was talking about different steps that white people need to take before we can make any kind of progress here. And so I thought I'd just share a few of the steps just so that, looking at this almost entirely white crowd, you can learn these with me. So they say the first step is to understand and accept your own racism, because to say, I'm not racist, I have black friends, I treat them equally to my other friends, that's not always the form that racism comes in. We are all racist because we have benefited from racist systems, and not only that, we have not spoken out against them nearly as much as we need to. So that's kind of the first step, is in accepting your own racism in this. Another step is to see how you have been shaped and benefited by these racist systems, and to, again, understand that and see that and try to not let black people get behind in their lives because of it by fighting these racist systems. Another really important step is listening to black people and people of color, reading books, watching documentaries, all of the things that I'm sure you've seen going around on social media. It's actually really important that we do look at that and we don't just ignore it because it's harder to look at it than it is to not. And the next step, they say, is to accept that you don't know everything and you're gonna make a ton of mistakes. And I think that's super, super important, because I mean, I planned this for a week, 2 weeks, and I made at least 55 mistakes that actually taught me a ton. So if we're not accepting our mistakes and learning from them, then we're just ignoring them. And our job in this movement is to fight racism every single time we see it. So that's systematic racism and doing things like protesting and voting and writing letters. Those are all ways to fight that, but also racism that we see in our day-to-day life. If you go to high school around here, I can almost guarantee that you have heard people make racist jokes or say the N-word, white people say the N-word, and every single one of us knows that's not okay, but it can be so hard to speak up against that. I need every single person here to speak up against that every single time you see that happen. Okay, so next up we have a close family friend of mine who kind of just jumped in last minute, and I'm so grateful for it. So, Leon, floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. Ahern, Allen, Andrews, Arms, Ashley, Ashton, Browns, the Callahans, the Deckers, Ellisons, Flowers, the Goodspeeds, the Higgins, the Jacksons, the Kilburns, the Leonowicks, which is my favorite, are the names that decorate your World War I monument out at the triangle where we began. The names of 127 people who gave their lives for this country in 1918, which happened to be the year of the Spanish flu, right? Which began in Kansas, according to the CDC. I have in my pocket a list of names of 126 African American people of color who have been killed at the hands of the police over the last few years. Names like Eric Garner, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin. And I have on my iPhone a list of 132 names of people who have passed in the last few months from the crisis that we now face, for which we are wearing the protective masks. So something too deeply is broken in our society right now, and something even more deep is healing. I minister to the church. My name is Reverend Dr. Leon Dunkley. I minister to a church, a Unitarian Universalist church in Woodstock, Vermont, about 2 hours north of here. There are not a lot of black folk in my town. After the George Floyd incident, The congregation that I serve and serve faithfully gathered together with urgency and passion and said, let's put a Black Lives Matter banner on the front of our church. And I said, before you do, you should realize that I've been here for 3 years. This stuff has been going on for much longer than that. If we put the sign up right now, there is no one in New England that's not going to think that I made you do it. Do you understand what I'm saying? I can't hear you. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So instead, we put up the names of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Nina Pop, and Tony McDade, as did a local gay bar up in Bethel, to create a vigil in town where people could come and lay their flowers, candles, rocks with prayers on them, notes. We gathered them up for 3 days, and then we met on the green, we prayed to them, and then we took down the vigil. The names of those people are now leaning on the pulpit in the church that we no longer enter. The water from the flowers was used to water the cornerstones of the church. We splashed the water on the cornerstones of the church. The flowers were taken to a garden in the mountains where we're growing food for the people who can't afford to eat right now. So thank you. I can't take much time. I just want to say that there are life-affirming and life-sustaining ways of getting through the challenges that we face today. And I want to quote one of my favorite poems, which is "Oh Beautiful, our heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self our country loved and mercy more than life." Do you recognize that verse? It's from America the Beautiful. And we can step into that again, and I think it's going to mean that we stop pretending that there is discontinuity between the beauty and the signs that you now hold and what it means to be an American. No discontinuity. We can stop pretending that there is. We can also stop pretending that everybody's going to understand that right away. I went and played guitar today at the lake near my house, and a pickup truck with 2 big, huge American flags and a bunch of presidential stickers on the back of the truck parked right next to mine. And we said hello to each other in a cordial way. There's a way through this. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Sadie, for inviting me, and thank you all for listening. Blessed day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Leon, for that. Next up, we have Reilly Isler to talk about Black people's experience with the police and how that is universal, or nationwide at least. Thank you.
Hello. Around 6 months ago, the day that I got my license, my parents sat me down in my living room and asked me a question. They asked me if I knew what to do if I was ever pulled over. I said yes, but when asked specifics, I couldn't really give an answer. So they told me, pull over your car, turn off your music, roll down your windows, and place your hands on your steering wheel. Don't move. Don't reach for your license. Don't reach for your registration. Don't be rude. Don't talk back. Stay calm and don't panic. Don't do anything to give them an excuse. It can be easy to say, we live in Massachusetts, we live in Western Mass, we don't see police brutality, this isn't an issue for us. It's ignorant to think that this statement is true because it is shown that it is not. Between 2013 and 2019, 56 people were killed by police in Massachusetts. Out of those 56, 26 were white, 15 were Black, 10 were Hispanic, 4 were of unknown race, and 1 was Asian. Black people make up roughly 9% of the population in Massachusetts, yet make up 27% of the population of people killed by police in the last 6 years. 2 of those people were killed by officers from the Springfield Police Department. Just this week, an officer was fired from the same police department for sharing a photo online of her niece protesting in Atlanta. This is a local issue, and to do anything but demand change is a failure to the Black citizens of this town, this state, and this country. This is not a problem that is going to be fixed by firing and rehiring officers or making national restrictions on the chokehold. The institution of the police force in this country is one rooted in the unjust treatment of Black and brown bodies. This is not a broken window in a house. This is a house with mold in the walls that has to be torn down to its foundation and built again. To make change, to make real change, we need to allocate the police budget to social service groups that can respond to calls regarding mental health crises, drug overdoses, homeless individuals, and social programs that are aimed towards helping underserved communities. Communities that are primarily inhabited by people of color and are over-policed and underserved by local, state, and federal government. Changing the way that law enforcement functions in this country will not be easy and will not be immediate, but it must happen if we ever want to live in a nation where we don't have to teach our Black children how to not be brutalized and killed by the people who are supposed to protect them.
Thank you so much, Riley. We will now be taking an 8-minute and 46-second moment of silence to represent the amount of time that the officer's knee was on George Floyd's neck. So if you'll join me in that moment of silence. Thank you. That is how long the officer held his knee on George Floyd's neck. That's not something anyone deserves. That is definitely not something someone deserves because of the color of their skin. So if you're here today, you showed that you believe that, and read and listen to everything you can, but don't use that as an excuse to not act and show up and say things. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for everyone who spoke today, and thank you for everyone who helped.